The one thing I will say is that as an historian, I am essentially in awe of the challenges that Barack Obama faces. I believe that this is someone who could not possibly have anticipated the burdens that would fall upon his shoulders. This is something which is only parallel, I think, to the experience that Abraham Lincoln had in 1860 when he became president and had to deal with a union that was falling apart, and with the huge problem of slavery and how to deal with emancipation and winning a war that took 694,000 lives. There's been no challenge like that since then. I mean, a lot of people want to say that this is like the 1929 and 1932 period. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You know, it is a lot like that because we had an implosion of the American economy. I congratulate you all on the fact that Australia has not been as much victimized by that as we were, but we asked for it. You know, we brought it on ourselves, as we did in 1929. But it's so much more than that. It's not just the economy. It's not just the climate. It's not just health care. It's not just jobs. It's not just Afghanistan and Iran. It's the whole bloody thing. And no president has come into office having to deal with such a multiple, pretentious group of issues. So let me talk a little bit about the history which leads up to this occasion. And the basic thesis of what I want to say is that not only is Obama facing more challenges and of a more profound dimension than anyone in the 20th century, certainly. But that in addition to that, this is a kind of a turning point. Whether he succeeds or fails is going to make a great difference to the world. It's going to make a great difference to the United States of America. And one of the things that hopefully people will realize is just how extraordinary his challenges are, which may hopefully contribute to a greater degree of patience about the fact that they're not going to be solved right away. And it's going to take time, effort, and a huge amount of commitment on the part of many people to get to that point. Let me begin by talking about the parallels to 1929 and 1932. Clearly, our economy fell apart 2 years ago because we essentially had deregulated everything. Most of the legislation that was passed during the New Deal to regulate the American economy was unpassed during the Reagan years and the Clinton years. The Clinton people bear full responsibility for an awful lot of this stuff. And that meant that you have this subprime mortgage fiasco, and you have this extraordinary proliferation of unemployment, people shutting down, banks failing. That's very parallel to what happened in 1929. Now, in 1932, you have Franklin Roosevelt being elected as president because no one knows what to do. Franklin Roosevelt doesn't know what to do, but he talks about a new deal for the American people. And most of us think of the New Deal as the beginning of the modern era in American politics, which is appropriate. But most of us also have the impression, I think, the New Deal did it. You know, the New Deal took care of that problem of the Depression. The New Deal solved it. And Franklin Roosevelt, praise the Lord, brought us out of it and we were okay. Not true. Not true. The New Deal did not solve the Depression. FDR came into office in an interesting parallel to the way Obama came into office, preaching the idea of bipartisanship, preaching the idea of coalition politics, using the analogy of World War I. This is a wartime situation. We need to come together in national loyalty and work together. And he passed a huge slew of legislation, which, if you look carefully at that legislation, is completely contradictory to each other. On the one hand, he's passing the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is nationalized power. On the other hand, he's supporting trust consolidations of trusts with the National Industrial Recovery Act, which gives business more power than they've ever had. On the other hand, he's sanctioning organized labor to go out and organize workers, which leads to an increase between 2 million members of organized labor in 1930 and 20 million members in 1945. That's pretty significant. But none of it really fits together. It's very important in terms of providing a safety net for the American people. And probably the most important things that we remember from the New Deal are the Social Security Act of 1935, which provided for the first time pensions for our senior citizens, and the Wagner Labor Act of the same year, which basically was a Magna Carta for organized labor. But what we do not recognize is that the New Deal didn't solve the employment problem. The biggest single period of recession in the country was 1938, 6 years after the New Deal, which was a terrible time of backsliding in terms of unemployment and things like that. Now, FDR did get reelected in 1936 with a 61% majority, which was very impressive. And he moved certainly to the left. He gave up the wartime coalition, the bipartisanship, because things had gotten so polarized. But there was no real structural change. There was no redistribution of income from bottom to the top or top to bottom. There was no real significant shift in the balance of power. The best historian of the New Deal, it happened to be my doctoral dissertation advisor, who talked about it as a parallelogram of pressure groups. Basically, it was a situation in which Roosevelt brokered power that already existed. And the power structure did not change hardly at all. That's important to realize because I think we're expecting of Obama that he's going to do something like the New Deal and solve it. But the New Deal didn't solve it. And that's the most important thing to realize is it didn't happen under the New Deal. So what did happen? World War II happened. World War II solved all these problems at a huge, huge, huge price. How did World War II do that? A, full employment. B, rising wages. C, rationing, so you couldn't spend your rising wages, which meant you could save them. Which meant when the war ended, you had tons of money to spend on the laboring product, the manufactured products that came out of the factories that had been producing war goods and now are producing washing machines and automobiles and new gadgets, vacuum cleaners, etc. The war made post-war prosperity possible. The war created the structure of the post-war economy, including a lot of the technology. That's where computers were first used in World War II. So it made that difference. You had total mobilization. Everyone was involved. Not only was everyone involved, people who had never been involved before were involved. This means that the most, in some ways, discriminated sections of the country, those who were African American, 75% of whom lived in the American South, and women who were not allowed, unless they were young and single and poor, to be employed, suddenly you have a major revolution taking place in both these areas. In 1938, 84% of the American people said in a Gallup poll that married women should not take jobs because they were taking jobs away from men, supposedly. And therefore, my aunt was a school teacher in the 1930s, and she eloped, and she was fired because you were not allowed to be married and to teach if you're a woman. Okay? So you get this incredible bias against this, against married women especially, and against women who are over 30 being employed. Now it is a matter of patriotic necessity. It is the duty. You are not being patriotic if you don't go to work and you're a woman. And so in World War II, 6.5 million women go to work for the first time. A 57% increase in the female labor force. And who are those women? They're married women. They're married women with children. They're over 30. These are the people who supposedly were not allowed to work before. And 82% of them said in 1944, in a public opinion survey by the Women's Bureau, they wanted to stay on the job.